This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 132, Busted, Top 3 Myths About Promoted Content. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is July 23rd, 2015. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Just a reminder, the Content Marketing Podcast is live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. All month long, we are taking a closer look at some of the trends that are shaping the future of our work as content marketers. Now, last week, we focused on the trend of live video with apps like Meerkat and Periscope and how we as content marketers can use this technology as part of our content marketing strategies. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to check it out on iTunes or on Stitcher or via the RSS feed. This week, we're focusing on another trend, and that is the growing need to, yes, open up our wallets and promote our content. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. It's actually been kind of a quiet week in the content marketing universe. Not a whole lot going on during this midsummer time. Did find some interesting information on what's going on over at, yes, Facebook. They are testing a watch later button for their videos. Now, if you do a lot of watching on YouTube, you might notice that there is a watch later option. Like if you click on a video and it's maybe 7 minutes, you don't want to watch it right this second, you can click watch later and then it automatically populates a watch later list that you can go back to. Well, Facebook, not to be outdone by those guys over at YouTube, are doing the same thing. Now, I also learned that video is actually one of the fastest growing content categories on Facebook. Last quarter, 4 billion daily views of videos on Facebook racked up. Now, that's not YouTube videos that people are linking to. Those are actual native videos on Facebook. And I'm sure you've noticed if you look at your news feed, those videos, I mean, you could easily see, 8 to 10 videos just in the first couple of scrolls. So Facebook, being the smart people that they are trying to leverage that. And one way that they're trying to increase the viewership of those videos is through this watch later button. Again, much like the one you see on YouTube. And you might remember 1 year ago, Facebook actually rolled out the Save Link button on link posts. So you click this, and it's in that, I'm trying to describe this on audio. If you look at a post, there's a little downward pointing arrow towards the top right of the post. And if you click on that, one of the options is Save Link. And then Facebook creates a saved posts option for you in that left-hand column. I have to admit, I never used the thing. I've got some stuff in there, so I might have checked it out when they first rolled it out, but honestly, I have not used it. But anyway, when this watch later button does roll out for Facebook videos, you will be able to click it and find those videos under that saved tab in the left column. So, I mean, for us content marketers, that's good news because, if people don't necessarily have time to watch our videos right then and there. And, sometimes I scroll through Facebook while I'm watching TV and, I don't want to pause Grimm or what else we are rewatching the entire series of the X-Files. I'm not going to pause the X-Files to watch some video that may or may not be any good. So it's going to make it more likely that people will come back and watch those videos when they have time. So good news for us content marketers. I also found a report this week about how reporters and editors are getting more and more of their news from social media. This came from an article on the Social Times, and Ogilvy Public Relations, whom you may have heard of, conducted a survey of 115 reporters, editors, and producers. And the report revealed that 35% of these folks rely on social media to keep up with headlines. Now that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's well over a third. And, these folks are looking at the same social media that we are to get their information that they can then, turn around and write about. Now, the report does not get into specific individual social networks. It probably depends on the reporter and whatever beat they're covering. But I have noticed, and it's been reported anecdotally many, many times, that Twitter tends to be the network of choice for these folks in the media. And it makes sense. Twitter's kind of... It has many aspects, but one of the strongest aspects is kind of a news feed. Something's going on right here, right now. The first thing a lot of people will think about is posting it on Twitter. In fact, I heard it was a statistic in one of Eric Qualman's videos that there was an earthquake pardon me if I messed this up. There was an earthquake, I want to say, in New Jersey, and the tweets about the earthquake reached New York City before the actual waves of the earthquake did. So, Twitter is that, what's happening now, what's going on right now, what do I want people to know about right this second. So it makes sense that it's kind of the network of choice for journalists. So sometimes when I work with clients, when they're asking, well, what's this Twitter thing? Am I going to tweet about my Starbucks order or whatever? And I say, well, one thing you can do definitely is start connecting with the journalists who cover your industry and start following them, engage with them, retweet their stuff, and kind of get on their radar so that, one day they might pick up something that you're putting out there. They might pick up your press release. But I thought that was an interesting report that said, that told us 35% of these journalists are relying on social media. Anyway, on to our content hit of the week. And this week I've chosen a post called How B2B Content Marketers Are Missing the Mark. This is by Ayaz Nanji on Marketing Profs. And he shares the results from a report from the Economist Group and Peppercom among 500. Now it's an interesting group that they picked for this report. They chose 500 global business executives, and they asked them about what they look for in content. And then they talked to 500 global marketers and asked them how they are building their content strategy. And what it points out is the big disconnect between what B2B clients or audiences are looking for and what B2B marketers are putting out there. Very interesting perspective. So I will, highly recommend this article, and I'll provide a link to in the blog post for this episode. Okay, that's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment. Busted! 3 myths about promoted content. This month, we are acknowledging the mid-year point, the fact that 2015 is now officially halfway over. I know, hard to believe, but we are honoring that by looking at some of the trends that are shaping the future of our work as content marketers. And this week, we are focused on promoted content, focused on the need that, yes, we are having to open up our wallets and spend some money, especially on those social networks, to get our content seen by our target audiences. And when we talk about promoted content, there are several different ways that can work. It could be promoted social media posts, which I think most of us are familiar with. We can also talk about paid online advertising, press release services, things like that. And, this is still a new reality for us content marketers. Not so long ago, you could put out any given blog post or any given ebook or audio content and attract attention naturally. You're putting this ebook out there for free. You could be pretty much well assured that people would latch onto it. But today, that's not so much the case. Our environment is just so ridiculously crowded with people competing for attention that we're having to look at different ways of getting eyeballs and or earballs on our content. And when people start looking at putting money towards promoting their content. They encounter a lot of myths. They might be getting some advice from people who are saying, oh, you know what they say about promoted content, and that might be kind of skewing their decisions. So today I want to tackle 3 of the biggest myths that might be holding you back from making promoted content a part of your strategy. The first myth, and I will raise my hand and say I bought into this one until fairly recently, is that promoted content goes against the principles of content marketing. You know, there's this perception that somehow the act of paying for attention somehow taints the content, and it's not honest, it's not real, it's not coming from the right place. The idea if it's not being found by virtue of its own merits, then it's not true content. Then it's just advertising dressed up in a content marketing dress. Indeed, when Facebook first launched promoted posts back in, I want to say 2013, maybe late 2012. My first thought was, oh, there goes the neighborhood. These brands are going to have to be promoting their content, and they're not going to promote anybody else's content. They're not going to promote their links to Forbes or to Entrepreneur or to other sources. They're going to be promoting their own stuff. So it's just going to be this big bullhorn after bullhorn of people promoting their own stuff. And the whole 80-20 rule is going to go out the window. That has by and large not happened, not on the apocalyptic to that extent that some of us were thinking. But yeah, I get it. I mean, it feels kind of seamy to have to promote your content. But here's the deal. Our world in 2015 is very, very different from the world we lived in just a couple of years ago. There is a ridiculous amount of competition for people's attention. I mean, think about all the blog posts out there, all the podcasts, and, just because you put something out there for free, that's no longer enough, because that whole market of free content is ridiculously crowded. And just to illustrate this point, I pulled up some statistics. Every single second, about 10,000 tweets are being sent on Twitter. On Facebook, 30 billion pieces of content are shared each month. 100 billion emails are sent and received every single day. And 2.5 million blog posts are published every day. So, when we look out there, it was kind of easy to get comfortable in our little niche of, just putting out our blog posts, putting out our social media posts, engaging, doing all those best practices we hear about. But the reality is the world is just, insanely competitive right now. And, thinking back to my college economics class, that space where one can get attention is a scarce resource. And one way to allocate that resource is through dollars or euros or pesos or whatever your currency is by forking over money. So, and this idea that it goes against the principles of content marketing, it really doesn't. It's really just kind of taking your content that is from the heart, that is out there trying to help people, and giving it a boost, helping it to get in front of more eyeballs. The second myth that I hear a lot is, well, I shouldn't have to promote my content. And again, I'm right there with you. Again, when, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, they all came out with their promoted options. I was like, damn it, I worked hard to get these followers. And now you're saying that I have to pay for people who have agreed to follow me to see my post? Are you kidding me? It was really a hard pill to swallow. And then, we sat there and watched our organic reach just dwindle down to, on my Facebook page, I have a decent following. I have a little over 300 followers, but sometimes I'll look at my results and it'll say one person saw this post. So, again, it's the reality of our world. And I want you to do a little experiment. If you are in front of a computer, now don't try to do this if you're driving or at the gym, or if you happen to be in front of a computer right now, go to Facebook, and in the left-hand column, you'll see a link called a Pages feed. Click on that. It will show you the latest post from the pages you follow. And, I did that yesterday, and I'm scrolling through all these posts from all these pages, and it's like, oh yeah, I did like that page. I haven't seen that for a while. I saw a post from Marlon Esparza, who was the Olympic boxer I was following back in, I guess the last Olympics was 2012. You know, she's still out there posting. I haven't seen her post in ages. And it was just funny to see all these pages that I had liked and never see their posts. But just think about it. Okay, if you saw, you know, look through that pages feed. If you saw every post from every page that you followed in your news feed, you'd never see anything else. First of all, there probably wouldn't be room for them all because a lot of them were posting at the exact same time. But second of all, that would be all you see. You'd never see posts from family or friends or, you know, the personal stuff that we all love to see in Facebook. And the same is true of LinkedIn, and the same is true of Twitter. So again, represents very much where the content marketing universe is at this moment. There are so many content creators, so many brands vying for attention that there has to be a differentiator. And in this environment, that differentiator is going to be, you know, fork over some money. The third myth that I've heard, and this is a little bit more on our side than on the network side, is, oh, it's too expensive. You know, I can't afford to promote my posts. And in reality, if you really look at the options out there, it's kind of like saying cars are too expensive, you know, and then you start looking at cars and there's like, okay, there's the, you know, used 1976 Pinto versus the 2016 Maserati. You know, there are a lot of different options out there. And, you know, actually, in my experience, promoted Facebook posts and promoted tweets are actually pretty reasonable. You can promote a Facebook post for as little as $1. You know, and you would be getting in front of a certain number of people for that $1. I've got a campaign on Twitter right now, tweeting about this month's webinar, and I checked yesterday. I'm paying about 67 cents a click, which is pretty darn reasonable, if you think about it. Now, not all methods are that cheap. Some are more expensive. LinkedIn, for example, I have done promoted posts there, and that came out to about $6 a click. So that's a little more expensive. And then we can go all the way up to, I mean, shoot, if you're really ambitious, get some sponsored content in the New York Times. I'm sure that will set you back a few bucks. But what I urge you to do is not just look at the price tag, but experiment with it and look at the value that it gets you. And not necessarily in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality. So, for example, when I do promoted posts on Facebook, I'm not necessarily, you know, I may get a lot of clicks and a lot of, you know, other interactions, but it's not necessarily my target audience. I found that the people in my target audience, who tend to be VPs of marketing, directors of marketing, they don't necessarily go to Facebook to get their marketing mojo. Now, they may be on there for personal reasons, and Facebook serves them up some promoted posts just because of their things they've clicked on in the past. But by and large, you know, they're more the Twitter and LinkedIn crowd. So, yeah, if your audience is on LinkedIn and you do some experimentation and that $6, you know, that click you paid $6 for turned into a $2,000 a month client, then yeah, you know, that's called ROI. So what I urge you to do is look at, you know, do some experimentation. Look at the places where your content, where your target audience hangs out. And I'm sure you know that by now because you're using that information in all of your publishing. And just do some experimentation. See what works better. Establish a budget. Say, okay, we're going to give, hypothetical example, we're going to take $100 budget and we're going to allocate 1/3 to Facebook, 1/3 to Twitter, and 1/3 to LinkedIn, and then just let it run. And then at the end of the month, see how things performed and say, wow, we got a lot of click-throughs on Facebook and not so much on Twitter. So next month you allocate. You might want to keep the same budget, or you might want to adjust that and allocate more to Facebook and less. I can't remember what I did, but allocate more to those areas that are performing better. And that's going to help you ensure that you get the most bang for your buck when it comes to that promoted content. So yeah, it may take some experimentation, try a little A/B testing, but to figure out what the magic mix is for you when it comes to your ideal client and getting in front of your target audience. Okay, that is my quick and dirty take on 3 of the top myths around promoted content. Now, of course, if you have any questions or if you want to add to the conversation, or if you have advice from your experience in using promoted content, I would love to hear from you, and I will give that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to talk about incorporating the personal into your content. And, sometimes we get so wrapped up in the business side of our content. And well, we should. It is a business tool. It's a way for us to connect with our audiences by providing useful information to inform, educate, entertain, and inspire. But sometimes we neglect to infuse the personal in what we do. People aren't just engaging with your brand. They're engaging with you. And sharing a little part of yourself on a personal level really helps to make that relationship all the more solid and to make you all the more memorable. Let me give you an example. Just this week, I put up a video blog post called What a Rescue Beagle Taught Me About Content Marketing. Now, it's a bit of a longer video. I think it's about 6.5 minutes, where I talked about the experience of adopting Cooter, the latest addition to our dog pack, and the lessons that I found in that experience for content marketers. And it has been by and far one of my most successful videos to date. Without any promotion, it has gotten, it's really, really done well, gotten a lot of engagement, a lot of shares, a lot of really good comments. And I think it's because it wasn't just another 3 tips for content marketers. I infused some of myself. If you know me, I'm a huge dog lover, and sharing this experience really helped me connect with my audience on a much more personal level. So that is my tip for you today. As you create your content, remember to give a little piece of yourself along the way. And if you are creating content for a larger organization, share a little bit about your shared interest. What is important to your team? What do they, when they do charity work, what kind of organizations do they support? Do they have a take your dog to work day or something, fun and interesting? Go ahead and don't be afraid to share that personal side. It's going to help you build much stronger relationships, and it's going to make you much more memorable among the people in your target audience. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. I've enjoyed our time together, as always. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. I also want to invite you to check out our webinar series. Now, it's usually on the 4th Wednesday of the month, which would have been yesterday. But this month, because of vacation schedules and, summertime craziness, we're doing something different. We are doing our webinar on demand. It is our Blogging 101 webinar. And if you register, you will get a link to the video of the webinar, and you can watch it at your leisure. To get signed up, I invite you to go to resonancewebinar.com. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's is very special because it comes from a gentleman named Berkeley Breathed. Now, if you grew up in the 80s like I did, you might remember a little comic strip called Bloom County. And, I know in my circle of friends, we loved it. We talked about it all the time. We read it every day. We got the books, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Bloom County is back. He has decided to start, Mr. Breathed has decided to start writing this comic strip again. So today, in honor of the return of Bloom County, I have a quote from Berkeley Breathed. He once said, quote, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.